Sweet. Should be nice and clear. Cool. So, I'm going to go over colour theory. This is going to take a little bit of time to get through because there's a lot to cover, but the basic things you should be able to pick at from it, okay? So if you've got any questions, just pop a hand up, or, because there's a little pop-up hand button in Google Meet now, or if you just want to shout out, we can have a discussion, it's fine. So colour theory and concept art. This basically goes hand in hand with last week. So there's a load of useful links in here. There's also a couple of videos I'm going to upload as well from a couple of YouTube channels that really go into how design works really, really well for a character and how it doesn't. So, what even is colour theory? So, general principles of colour theory were evident in writings from this person back then. I'm not going to try pronouncing the name. And notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. The first colour wheel was developed by Sir Isaac Newton around the start of the 17th century. This colour wheel was an arrangement of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, which is what you've probably heard of, which is, colours of the rainbow, right? Or Richard of York gave battle in vain, which is not the correct colour wheel, but we'll go with it. Since the origination of the colour wheel by Newton, it has become one of the most powerful tools available to artists to explain the relationship between colours. There's a lot of reading here. Basically, colour's important. Please pay attention to colour. Colour's important. You can make or break a character by picking the wrong colours. It's that simple. Colours are, depending on your school of thought, there's two schools of thought. There is the idea that the way light works with colour versus the way that we add sort of like paint. Right? So with light, your three primary colours aren't red, blue, and yellow. Your three primary colours are cyan, magenta, and yellow. And they add up to make red, green, and blue. Now, red, green, and blue are not your primary colours. Okay? The way we see it normally is red, blue, and yellow. So that's the one you're probably taught in school, is like blue and yellow makes green, red and blue makes purple, red and yellow makes orange. That's the way you're taught. That's the additive colour theory. Okay? So what this means is that we're adding two colours together to create a new colour. If you add all three of these together, you get brown. It's just simple. The three secondary colours are green, orange, and purple. They are made by mixing two of the primary colours. So that's how we see it normally in the additive colour spectrum. If you're seeing it in a subtractive one, which is how we deal with light, or how it's weird to think that this is how your printer will work, because what it's doing is it's getting white and then taking colours out of it to make other colours show up. We're not going to bother with that one pure, but if you see anyone saying the primary colours are cyan, magenta, and yellow, that's where it comes from. So terminology, so hue, apart from being, a dad name, hue is often used as a simile for the term colour. Hue generally refers to the dominant wavelength of colour. So all colours have a wavelength. This is a little bit of science. All colours have a wavelength, from red being the lowest wavelength all the way up to purple, like violet, which is why lasers use red on like the short end, and they go all the way up to like Blu-rays, which is literally a Blu-ray of light, which is like a violet colour. So all colours have a different wavelength. The dominant wavelength, aka the colour, is called the hue, being the primary, secondary, and tertiary colours on the wheel. For example, the hue of navy is blue, the hue of burgundy is red, the hue of sap green is green, quite obviously. The colours to the right are hues. So these are all different hues, okay? So you've got your three primary colours, you've got your three secondary or tertiary colours, and you've got all these different hues that go around it. Saturation. So saturation is how much of the colour there is, or how pure the colour is. So is it pure colour, or is it black and white? You can reduce the saturation of any colour by adding grey or a colour on the opposite side of the colour wheel. This essentially kills the colour. So we'll get into this in a little bit, but if you add purple to yellow, they kind of cancel each other out. If you completely desaturate the colour wheel, you are left with an image that you can see on screen. So notice how it basically goes darker as it goes round. You can tell kind of how powerful the colour is, right? So tone is a widely misunderstood term, and many artists are not entirely sure what it means. Tone is a broad term used to describe a colour which is not a pure hue and is not black or white. many cases artists use tone to describe a colour which has been greyed down. So, for example, if you're saying, oh, it's got a, this brown's got a really reddish hue or a reddish tone, what that means is that it's a brown, but it's heaviest on the red side, but it's been dulled down. It's not a pure brown. Value. So value is another one. It doesn't mean how expensive it is. Value is how light or dark the colour is on the scale of black to white. Value is widely considered to be one of the most important values in the success of a painting. So using various values, so you don't want to have a character that's all one colour or one value. You want to try and vary it up because you need visual contrast. Okay? So terminology, so another one. Complementary. So complementary colours are opposite to each other on a colour wheel. So if you ever get a colour wheel and you're thinking, right, my character is mostly red. Okay, say you're making, I don't know, you're making some sort of devil demon character, right? And you want a colour that's really going to pop certain areas, you would add green. Or if you're making, a marine that's got lots of blue on him, and you want something that's going to pop, you'd use yellow or gold colours, or orange or gold colours rather, just to try and counteract them because that's how they work. So you should select the dominant colour and use the other colour as an accent. You don't want to do 50-50 split. You should always have a dominant colour to try and create a harmony. So never go in 50-50 with colours, right? You want to always point out, for example, say next time you go to a shop and you have a look at, I don't know, have a look at like any sort of food packaging. If the primary colour is yellow, you will see lots of blues and purples on there, like just little bits of highlight for the packaging, right? Usually, depending on what they're trying to go for. If they're trying to go for something that's like, it's going to be really mellow, they'll go for something that's maybe a bit purple, and it'll have little bits of yellow on it. Analogous. So, most people say this is analogous. It's wrong. It's analogous, okay? So, a relaxing colour combination using colours at positions next to each other on the colour wheel. Analogous colours combinations were famously used by Impressionist artists such as Monet. So, if you're trying to create something that's like really sort of, it mixes together well, you would pick colours that go next to each other on the colour wheel, okay? So, if you're trying to make something with yellow, you might want to add some greens and some oranges in there. Or if you're trying to do some purples, you might want to throw some pinks, reds, and blues in there, just because they blend together really well. If you were doing this and you were adding bits of orange and yellow, they would really sort of go against each other. It wouldn't work out. So triadic colour scheme uses 3 colours which are evenly placed around the wheel. So this is like your primary colours, your secondary colours. You can do whatever you want with it. Generally, a dominant colour is selected, and the 2 other colours are used as accents. So, say you were doing purple, you would use green and orange as your accent highlight colours. So, say we go for the big one, right? Red, blue, and yellow, okay? If you think of, if any of you play tabletop games, normally Space Marines are normally a bright blue colour or a dark blue colour. And what they have is they have bits of red and bits of yellow on them. The yellow is gold, but it still counts. So you would have blue armour, bits of red maybe on the eyes and maybe on shoulder pauldrons or stuff like that, and you'd have gold as a trim colour. So they balance out. So this is just all terminology. This is just stuff that we're going to be using to talk about colour. Split complementary. So this is not going for the direct one. So if you notice the triangle, look, purple, it's meant to be yellow as the direct opposite, but what we're doing is we add in colours on either side. That way it's not just a super harsh contrast. Colours can be split into various groups and categories to help merge them together. This isn't just a random assortment of colours that have no rhyme or reason. There will be colours that you will be familiar with. So, warm colours. So these are things that you've probably heard terms of, like, ooh, think of a warm colour. Think of cold colours. Generally we say that you usually think with your brain colour-wise. So, for example, if I was to say autumnal colours or like autumn colours, people would usually go with brown, red, orange, green, and yellow, right? So you'd pick one of them and then you'd pick, okay, well, you've got a lot of warm colours, and then greens you push back on that. So, or if we were to say, I don't know, oceanic colours or colours that, you think about when you think of the sea. You think of stuff like blues, greens, maybe some, yellows for your, like sand and stuff like that. So obviously you're going to be using a lot of blues and greens, and because blue-green is like your opposite, you would probably be using like an orange for that as your opposite colour if you needed to. So, typical colour grouping. So you do have things called neutral colours. So neutral colours often serve as the backdrop of design. They're commonly combined with brighter accent colours. So stuff like browns. Brown really doesn't fit into the colour spectrum if you want to get technical with it. Have you ever tried, has anyone here got RGB lighting in their house? Or have you got any RGB lights at all? If anyone's ever tried that, if you ever get the chance, try it as an experiment. Try making brown light. It's really difficult to do because it's just a really, really faded orange. That's it. Brown light technically doesn't exist. It exists as a colour because it's just a dark brown. It's just a dark orange, but it's really difficult to make brown light. It just looks like a dim orange light. So that's another thing. So I'm a few minutes late. That's fine, don't worry about it. We're recording the session anyway. So neutral colours are colours that don't really fit into the colour spectrum. So stuff like greys, skin tones, usually it looks burgundy. It will look, because your lighting will try and make the brown, but obviously because it's trying to use brightness, it's a colour that's very bright. Brown isn't real. Brown is real. It's just in terms of light, it doesn't exist. In terms of trying to generate light, anyway, because it's because of the way it's done. This goes back to the hue thing. Brown is a colour that it's not devoid of vibrance, but what it is it's not a very saturated colour. You don't get very luminescent browns, okay, because they're all desaturated because there's a lot of grey mixed into it. So that's how that works. Same with skin tone. So skin tone, you don't get very shiny skin. You get like a sheen over the top of it, but that's because we're humans and we're disgusting and we've got oil all over our skin. But skin tone is another one because it's just a very light orange, but it's gone the other way. So instead of having a very instead of going for a darker grey mix, what it's done is it's gone for a very lighter grey mix, and that's how skin tone works. Okay? So we have reds and blues and yellows in our skin very faintly, but we have them. But our main skin tone is basically this orangey colour, and then you either push the greys darker, which is why you get brown, or you push the greys lighter and you get Caucasian skin tones like peach. Okay? So they're commonly combined with bright colours. So you can use these in anything really. So browns, skin tones, even darker skin tones. Obviously, we're not all white, but using browns for stuff like leather, that's fine. You've got greys as well. So stuff like silvers or blacks or whites, stuff like that. They're all neutral colours because they go with anything. You've got monochromatic. So monochromatic colour schemes are basically you have one colour and then you adjust the level of vibrance in the colour. So monochromatic schemes are easy to create, but they also look boring when done poorly. Adding it to strong neutral like white or black can keep it interesting. So stuff like this. So this is all yellow, but all we've done is we've added more of a grey here, we've added more white here, there's more of a flat grey here, and then we've gone back to pure yellow, and then we've dulled it down a lot here. So that's monochromatic colours. So mono literally means one, and chromatic is the chromos. So we need to understand colour theory. So why have I got two pictures of Elsa? Because colours along with design elements and silhouettes make a character stand out. Colour choice can help ingrain and establish ideas of a design rather than fight against them in their own internal ideas of design and norms. So an icy cold type character will mostly dress in blue or white. So, again, Elsa, she's a cryomancer, which basically means that she can create ice and throw ice around, and, she's an ice mage, basically. If we dressed her in red and black, you would automatically think she was a fiery character. You wouldn't, because humans have this really weird ability that we like to associate things with things. We like to put little things in little compartments in our brain, and we like to go, ice is water, water is blue, blue cold, ice white, therefore cold. Cold type character whose favourite colour is red. Let's have a look at characters that are typically icy type characters. Okay, Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat, blue. Elsa from Frozen, blue. Anything that's like a snow man, obviously, is white. Other Frozen type characters. Jack Frost is white and blue. He has little bits of yellow, but they're highlight colours. You have... Just trying to think of other icy type characters. Actually, we'll do a Google search. So I've literally just googled icy themed characters, and blue and white, Iceman. You can see what I mean? Lots of blue. So it works, but because we go back to, if we go back to our groupings, cold colours. Okay, you may have a cold character that has lots of purple and greens in them, but the main colour will always be blue or white. Mario with ice abilities, he has bits of red on him because obviously that calls back to the main character colour, which is red. We actually do discuss Mario in a minute, and I'll show you why the Mario colour themes really work quite well. She needs warm makeup. Yeah, they've given a kind of a warm eye palette, but it really... They've even made her hair more yellow as well. Like, if you look in the first image here, they've made her hair, like, quite desaturated and white. They've gone back into the theme. She's got bits of highlight, like pinks, on her dress and everything, which is fine, because that's, you know, it breaks the character up. She has kind of, like, this purple around her lips, which, again, it's trying to push that thing of, like, colour theming. And then on this one, they've made her hair even more yellow. So... It does help. Humans are simple creatures, so we like to keep things in our internal memory and consistency. So yeah, it does work. So we also like to use colours as emotions. So this is a really weird topic to talk about. Purely because everyone has their own ideas of what colours mean. So these are just typical examples. So blue, for example, right? We think of blue, we think of like a trusting character. So we think of, you meant to think of things like policemen. Obviously, with this day and age, that's up for debate. But usually blue is like a trusting colour. If you think of things like Ravenclaw in Harry Potter, which you think typically blue is like a smarter colour. You know, it's a colour that's associated with being smarter. It's a calming colour. It's a colour that's used a lot in sort of faith paintings, especially stuff like Mother Teresa and the Virgin Mary and stuff like that. Blue is like a very neutral colour. It's seen as like a power colour because back in the day it was really sort of hard to get blue paint. Just checking chat. Banks are usually a mixture of red, blue and black. Yeah. Bank colours are usually very, very flat as well. But blue is seen as like this calming neutral. I don't know why. Red is seen as like a very emotional colour because they use it on everything. So they use it on like love hearts. They use it for like it's like immediacy. It's seen as like a very powerful colour because it's used so heavily, especially in media. So if you think of red, you think of stuff like love hearts, or you think of energy, or you think of strong fire, things that burn very brightly and burn very hot and burn quickly. So it's very I don't want to say aggressive because it sounds like it's a bad thing, but it's an aggressive colour in the sense of it can be positive aggression, it's just very forward in your face. It's not a very mellow colour. Black's very bold. I don't know, the yellow delay of death is strong. Yeah. So black's seen as a very neutral colour. Again, it's a neutral colour, but it's a sign of a lot of things. So black is, because it mixes with so many things, and because, again, humans, back to, if we think lizard brain, caveman brain, we think of the dark, and the dark is full of dangers. So we think of it as a very dangerous, evil colour. But it's also mysterious. It's a powerful colour. It's probably, it's the boldest colour because it stands out against everything pretty much. Green's a very soothing colour. Obviously, a lot of trees are green. So everyone immediately thinks when you think of green, especially when you're looking at recycling and stuff like that, green's a very peaceful, earthly colour. You don't think of, snowmen when you think green. All these colours have very different connotations. For example, purple. Purple was very, very difficult to produce back in the day. In order to get the purple dye, there was a very rare breed of sea snail that people used to have to get, and it took, I think it was like 2,000 snails to get just 2 grams of dye, which is why when you see like the Romans or the Egyptians with like big purple robes, a lot of snails died to get that dye. But it was seen as a very wealthy colour because only they could afford it. So that's why purple's this like mysterious royal colour, because it took so much effort to get. Red also means royalty. Red is also a very royal colour. Obviously, these are not just the only definitions, but these are typical ones, okay? For example, if you look at pink, it's seen as femininity, right? But it's seen as a negativity. Why? Who made this list and said that pink's a But then again, you've got blue here, masculinity is a negative colour there, so...
So you like have like
they're equal. They're equally bigoted. It's fine. They just hate everyone. Whoever made this. I love the fact that brown, skin, tan colour, and grey are all seen as conservative colours. It's like, why? The conservatives are negative, apparently, according to the person who made this chart.
This is the like. What? This is so confusing. This is a weird nuts chart. It's just.
This is just why your colour choice is important. So if you're making a sort of like a hippie type character, you wouldn't make them all purple with like bits of black on them, because it just wouldn't sell the character. You'd go for the earthly colours like browns and oranges and greens.
Yeah, I feel like if they do like. With that, though, I feel like the problem with that is they've added positives and negatives to the colour.
Yeah.
And none of them are entirely positive or negative.
Negative, exactly.
Helps. Like,
royalty seen as a positivity, but it could be a negativity.
Yeah.
You never play.
Anger, danger, and warning.
Warning's a good thing.
Yeah, like warning that you don't die because of it.
Well, you can do if you ignore it. Yeah. Feminine's a positivity, but it's also a negativity. Why? Why is that? I don't get it. I just don't get it. They're just like, is that on a boy? Because typically, if you want to get into the history of colours, because I'm a nerd and used to research this stuff for fun. Before World War II, pink was a boy's colour, and blue was a girl's colour.
Boys and blue was girls.
Yeah.
Because
you can actually blame World War II and Hitler for that, because he made it so pink was seen as a girl's colour. So embrace your inner queen. Exactly, Katie. Everyone should embrace their inner queen. You don't have to be a boy. You can be a boy or a girl to embrace your inner queen. It's absolutely fine. So the other thing, I like to call it the Pokemon effect. So if any of you have actually played Pokemon, you'll know that colours get boxed off into certain things, right? Or the colours as elements. So, for example, when you think of ice, again, you think of light blue. Water's a dark blue. A lot of people, especially in my generation, will link colours to the actual types of Pokemon. You can just ask people what colour was nature, and they'll go green. They won't say, what colour's nature? Purple. Because unless they've got a very specific thought in their head, but most people go, grass is green, therefore grass.
It's all like different. I think it's like some of them I think work better on like this chart that you've got. Some of them work better than others.
Yeah.
Like fire works well, poison works well.
Fighting.
Like fairy and flying, ghosts and stuff, they work well.
Fighting is brown. Well, they couldn't have any other colour for fighting, could they? Because they've already got 2 tan colours for ground and rock. They've got 3 purples. They've got 4 purples. It's just kind of weird. What is the colour of fighting? I mean, typically in the actual original Japanese language, fighting type is called hero type. It's not actually fighting, it's hero type, and then dark is evil type. So the dark one kind of makes sense, but fighting, it's just like hero type. I don't know any brown superheroes. Like, they don't wear tan suits. They're normally like bright red or blue, or they're like Batman just wearing headstone black leather. I thought Dragon was red and blue split. Like, technically it is, because it's purple.
Some of the colours could have been picked a lot better.
Yeah. So you've got examples in games of colour contrast, right? I've got to go to the meeting at 10:30. That's absolutely fine. What time is it now? Oh, you got an hour. It's fine. So, what we've got here, we've got multiple games that use sort of split colours, right? So red and blue, we know two primary colours, okay? So they're not opposites, but what they do is they use the example in this game here where you have these two very strong colours. It's not like blue and light blue, it's two colours that are very, that are very bright and will glow very bright, so you can see them. Portal uses blue and orange because they are polar opposites, which makes complete sense. And red and green here for the Super Mario mushrooms. The red one is obviously a healthy one. The green one's a life up, right? They also use purple, which is the poison one. The only problem is if you've got a set type of colour blindness, you can't see the difference. That's why they started making the mushroom that's just the one-up mushroom versus that. They made it darker.
Yeah. So the ones that I was like with like the poison ones aren't they, like evil aura looking stuff?
Yeah, they've basically just got the mushroom and just drawn eyebrows on it. That's it. That's all they've done.
Yeah.
So we've got some examples.
If it's round and nice, then you should pick it up. If it's evil and jumping at you, then run.
Yeah, that goes back to shape as well. All this combines the characters, right? So, for example, good and terrible design decisions. Okay, Mortal Kombat. So the original ninjas were obviously Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Reptile. All they did with the original Mortal Kombat was they combined yellow and blue to get green. And they just took the sprite. So this is all the same actor. It's all one character sheet. But in game, all they do is they change the way that it works, right? Then you've got Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, and Smoke, right? But they use the same character sprites. And then you've got Ermac, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Smoke, and Rain. And it's just like, oh, we've got them all. The problem is, there you go. Which one's which? If you're colourblind, which one is which? No one knows. Because the only way you can tell is the fact that they've got...
You see somebody else like Scorpio, Sub-Zero, I don't remember like half their names. But and just like, you're like, oh no, what do I do? Which one is it?
Yeah.
How do I dump their moves?
The problem is they did change all the colours, but if you're colourblind or... if you have some other issue with your vision, you're screwed. The only difference you can tell is sort of the stance, but half of them have the same stance. So we're going to get into just thinking about colour palettes for characters, right? So when we think of Mario, we think, right, he's the main character. Obviously, in every game he's in, he's the main character. He's a typical everyman. We like to think of him as brave. So his colour palette... he uses a lot of primary colours. Obviously, he's the main character. He's the primary focus. He should be the primary character. His main colour is red, and they use a lot of blues and other stuff around him. So they use a lot of neutrals. So they've got white, we've got brown for his moustache, we've got some tan for his boots, things you wouldn't really notice. But we use red as his main colour, blue for his overalls and his eyes, and then yellow as a highlight, right? Because it's the three primary colours that work together. It's a very good, classic character design. It works really well.
Yeah. It's also very balanced, isn't it? It's like it's kind of like to put the Nero if he's just a guy.
Yeah.
Who's because it's not like he has this kind of dominating. He's a hero trait or everything. It's just.
Then we get to because he's the primary character. We immediately think we know he's the primary character because he uses a lot of primary colours. We don't actually think that word for word, but our brain will do the working out. He doesn't use any contrasting colours that are used to help keep him looking neutral, so he's very open. You can actually, if you look at him, you think, oh, he's, you can look at him and go, he's an open character, don't have to be afraid of him. We go to his brother. So his brother it's a really bit of cool, clever design. So obviously red and green are opposite colours, so we can tell them apart, but green, yellow and blue also mix well together. So Luigi has that same sort of colour harmony of, he's got very open, It's not like he's suddenly wearing purple and orange. You know, he's not doing that triad that's very sort of in your face glaring.
That's for Luigi.
Yeah. So Luigi's he even like slight differences. If you look at the colour palette, the brown they use in his shoes is always slightly different as well. It's only slight, but it's different, right? But again, he's an everyman. He's a secondary primary character. So they used the secondary colour, but they also tied it back to Mario's original design. So everything's the same apart from the green, which is obviously the polar opposite. So we can tell that there's a link between the two, but they are two separate characters. So it's just things like that. Remember why he's not got matching hair and moustache colours? I think it's because when they did the original version, they did that. I was like, he dyes his hair. So Peach is designed by association, and she's just like, ooh, she's a princess, cool. Let's throw loads of yellow and pink at her because girly colours. But to be fair, her design actually works very well. So she's meant to obviously be Peach. She's not the colour of a peach because she's not, you know, peachy coloured. She's pink. But back in the day, they couldn't actually give a peachy colour because I don't think that the NES had the ability to, so they made it pink instead.
They could not make her peach coloured, so they made her close enough.
Yeah, but Daisy is more peachy coloured because she's like slightly orange, which is kind of weird. You think Daisy'd be pink and then Peach would be peach, but no. So they use lots of floral and bright colours. Obviously, she's not a dark, mysterious character. They use lots of bold, bright colours to try and emphasise she's a very bold and bright character. She's not, you know, she's not sitting there slumming it. You know, she's not like a grumpy person. She is, you know, she's very upbeat and happy. They use blue and orange to create the visual contrast. So her basic colour palette is very pink with yellow, which is fine. They're two very bright, typically feminine style colours. They're very magical colours as well. Pink and purples are very seen as magical colours because of the connotations they have. Okay, so they've got a very bright colour palette, but she's also got a lot of light blue. Obviously, it ties back to her eye colour, which is the same as Mario and Luigi. But also, she's got a lot of orange and gold because she's Princess Peach, you know. So they want to try and link that back in. Gold's also quite a dark colour. In real life, gold is actually a brown colour. But obviously, if you have slap brown on her, it's going to look really weird. It's not going to work. And you can't see her shoes, so we can't see what colour her shoes are.
They use extra bright fantasy gold.
In general, gold. If you look at gold under a UV light that can see colour, it's brown. The only reason it's so shiny and yellow is because it's reflective. At what point is being held hostage?
Most of the light from it comes from everywhere else in the room. Like, the brightness of gold. It's everything else but
it's a shiny colour, exactly. Yoshi's colour palette it's kind of weird. Because he's not human, obviously he doesn't have skin tone. But what they've done is they've used green as his base. So they've basically done the same thing as Mario, where they've used green as his main colour, and then they've used red, orange, and yellow as his highlight colours, really. So for some reason green again, very mellow colour, very, you know, obviously he's a dinosaur. So we typically associate dinosaurs being green and brown and whatever. So we've gone with that, even though the Yoshis are all sorts of different colours. And we show in red on there because even though he's a very lovable character, he's very, you know, open, he's got lots of round shapes. We go back to our shape design, he's very round, he's not got a lot of harsh edges, even his tail's very, very smooth. At this point, he's got no teeth. It still shows that he has some element of danger to him, but not to you. He has ability. He's an attacking character. Peach really doesn't have an attacking, you know, especially in the Mario platforming games. She doesn't have her own like attack. She's basically she's damsel in distress, you know, that old chestnut. Whereas
she sits there, and is useless.
She gets and unless you're looking at the new games, but if they change the design in the new games, everyone would kick off. So they've just kept it the same. So the design works really well for the older games, but it doesn't work for the newer games. But it's absolutely fine because they've done lots of stuff with the character anyway, so she's kind of established now. So Yoshi's colour palette is, you know, it's very autumnal, it's very green, it's very soothing, earthly colours, right? Bowser is he has basically the same color palette as Mario, except he is using
It's like color, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's the thing of the only thing he's not using is blue. So his color palette. So we think of the traits. Okay, we think of Bowser. He's able to breathe fire. He's very aggressive. He's evil. In question mark. He's a lizard, and he's quite cunning. So they've used that to the advantage. So they've used a lot of contrasting colors. So he's got green and red right next to each other to stand out. He's a lizard, so they've gone with this very yellow and like tan sort of color scheme, just so it also stands out. They've used a lot of grey, not black. They've used grey because grey is obviously a very metallic color, and he's got a lot of harsh edges as well. So if we go back to our, if we look between the two creatures of the Mario universe, Yoshi's very friendly. He's very round. Bowser is meant to be aggressive. He's got lots of sharp, pointy edges. He's got round bits as well, but that's just to emphasise heft. He's a thick boy, but he's got lots of spikes. He's got a very aggressive
big
form
and heavy, and he hits very hard.
Yeah.
That's why he's big and round.
He also has what we call a lack of visual noise. So he doesn't have like big areas of lots of contrast. He has things like his hair, which again it just helps emphasise the aggression. That's it. Wario is a weird one. So we think of the character, we think of, he's very loud, he's very garish, he's very abrasive. So he is the human equivalent of loud sandpaper, right? He's just angry. Even his mustache designed that way. He's very pointy, but he's also slovenly and slow and lazy, right? So he's got lots of contrasting colours. So he's got lots of purples next to yellows. Purple's also a very, mysterious, smart, cunning colour. So they've used that as his base. Yellow obviously helps. So they've gone with the opposite of what they did with Mario, which is, they had that nice colour harmony where he all works together. They've basically gone for the three opposite colours here, whereas his skin's very orange. He's got purple and he's got green boots. So he's very contrasty. They work together because they're all tertiary colours, but they're all the exact opposites of Mario's.
I think what took him.
Go for it.
They're exact opposite of Mario. I'm pretty sure that's like how they came up with the character of Wario and like Waluigi.
Yeah.
It's just what if we just made the opposite characters?
Well,
and then that's how.
Well, with Wario, Waru is actually the Japanese for I think bad. So Waru Mario is just Wario, so it's just bad Mario. That's literally how they came up with the name. But you look at him as well. He has a lot of the same design elements as Mario. He's a very little round dude, but they've designed him in a way where his face even looks like it contradicts itself. He's got blue around his eyes. He's got a big pink nose. Nothing seems to fit. He just looks like he turns up to the pub on a Saturday night and just throws things at people.
He starts fighting not because he's angry, but because he wants to fight.
Yeah. But he's got bold colours as well. He doesn't have any dull colours. He has lots of bold colours for a bold, because he's got a really bold personality. So that's very, very simply how you can go about taking colour and using it in effective ways. So if we think of, like, say you're doing, you're at a realistic game, right? We'll go with Red Dead because it's usually the example people go with, right? You're going to go with colours that are obviously of the time, so research is key. But you wouldn't use a lot of vibrant purples. You wouldn't use a lot of bright yellows in the colour palette. You would use stuff that they would naturally be able to get, so blues, reds. They would have a lot of brown leather or, natural material colours. Whereas if you're doing something that's super fantasy, you've got to think about, okay, what would the colours be and why? So if we think of stuff like, I don't know, name a character, the Terminator, right? The Terminator robot. Well, they're metallic, right? So they're all grey, but they've got a very neutral colour palette 'cause it's all grey, black and white. They just reflect things. But the only bits of colour they've got on them are their teeth, because they're meant to look like human teeth. So they've got this white set of pearly white teeth, and they've got glowing red eyes, which is basically, you've got this devil stare straight at you from this character that is a cold, unfeeling machine. It's a really, really good design for that. Any character really, there are some good and bad character designs for that. I'm just going to stop the recording now.